Hi drivers, this is Paul Taylor from Truckers Justice Center. I'm an attorney. We are a law firm that represents truck drivers in disputes with trucking companies. We don't take every case, we don't take all types of cases, but generally we take wrongful termination, retaliation claims, or claims for owner-operators where they've been skimmed from, and occasionally we take a blacklisting claim. So I want to talk about blacklisting claims. And first of all, saying truthful information about a driver. If a carrier says something truthful, they're probably exempt from a blacklisting claims. It means you don't have one. Now we get into a gray area with accidents. So an accident, whether it's preventable or not, could certainly be debatable. So for example, I have cases where drivers call me, I hit black ice, ran off the road, a tow was required. The company has reported this as a DOT recordable accident. And they'll say to me, it wasn't my fault, I hit black ice. And my retort to that is, well, perhaps the carrier could reasonably construe that you were driving too fast for conditions, or you should have checked the weather reports, or should have checked your tires. So accidents are very difficult to disprove. Generally, a blacklist for an accident might occur in a case where, say for example, your DAC report says you were in Tucumcari and involved in an accident on February 28, 2019, and you can prove that in fact you were in Bangor, Maine on February 28th. And so that isn't necessarily a blacklisting claim. Blacklisting occurs when an employer has marked you for avoidance. Marked you for avoidance, so that somebody, it's calculated to make sure that you're not hired, and generally the information has to be false. So to determine first if you've been blacklisting, it's not to call us and say, I think so-and-so, Swift, Prime, Martin, I'm not picking on them, that's just an example. I think this particular carrier is telling people not to hire me. And I said, why do you say that? Well, because I'm not getting hired and there's a great demand for drivers. Well, we don't really know. Perhaps they're running your name in a background check and it shows a felony. Maybe your name is Jack Smith and they got the wrong Jack Smith, or the wrong John Johnson, or the wrong Susie Jones. But to have a blacklisting claim, first of all, what they say has to be false, manifestly false, not subject to opinion. Sometimes we get blacklisting claims for an abandonment, and in that case, maybe it's not necessarily false, but the abandonment is on your DAC report because you wouldn't drive a vehicle that didn't comply with DOT regulations. If you'd like to see an interesting blacklist case, there's a case out there called Albert Cantor versus the big flatbed hauler, Maverick. So I was just prompted by my assistant Cassidy. He didn't get fired, but he resigned and refused to operate a truck, to return the truck to Maverick. There's a dispute whether it was to a drop yard in Ohio or back to Little Rock, but the dispute involved his refusal to operate the truck because it did not comply with DOT regulations, and we won that blacklisting claim, but it had to go all the way to the United States Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. So maybe the abandonment is partially true, but it was motivated by an illegal purpose. In other words, to punish him because he would not operate a vehicle that didn't comply with commercial vehicle safety regulations. So one of the things you want to do if you're going to bring a blacklisting claim to us or to any lawyer, this is simply an educational video. If you want to bring a blacklisting case to us, we need to know what the company is saying. So first things first, you should order, if you think you've been blacklisted, order your DAC report. Go to HireRight.com. Now HireRight has some competitors. 10th Street, There is a company called Driver Facts, which generally is just accident information. And there's a company called Driver IQ. Every driver should at least check annually to see what's on their employment history reports with Driver IQ, 10th Street, and DAC, now known as Hire Right. It hasn't been called DAC Services for at least 20 years, but people still call it DAC Services, just like every tissue is a Kleenex. So you can order that. You can get it for free within 30 days, once per year. They're subject to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which covers consumer reports, which could be credit, employment history, medical, insurance history, things of that nature. So one, you can find out that way what a former employer is saying about you, at least in some of the things they're saying about you. The other thing you can do to determine if you're being blacklisted or simply determine what's being said about you is send a letter to any carrier for whom you apply for work. Even if you're not, if you want to find out what a previous employer, a carrier, is saying about you, periodically apply for work with another carrier. Because any place you apply for work, any company subject to commercial vehicle safety regulations is required to conduct a background report on you, including contacting your previous employers for a certain number of years. And so what you do is you send them a letter. Write this down. 49 CFR 391.23. That is a regulation that says if you ask an entity for whom you have applied to work and been turned down, or who has hired you, if you ask them for their background check information, they have to provide it to you, provided you make that request within 30 days after being turned down for employment or 30 days after being hired. So you send a letter. Dear sir, send it to safety or HR. Send it certified. Email it. Fax it. Keep proof of that delivery and say, dear sir or madam, or you can look up the safety director's name online and say, I recently applied for work with your company. My employment was denied on such and such date. Put in the date. Pursuant to 49 CFR 391.23, please provide me all information you received from my previous employers as part of your background check on me. Send that, keep proof of sending it. They are required to send that information back to you within 30 days. It's important that you meet that 30-day deadline of requesting it. And the information that your previous employers are required to give is information relating to your compliance with controlled substance and alcohol testing regulations, and to any information on DOT recordable accidents, whether they're preventable, non-preventable, etc. So you send that information comes back to you. Now, whether or not they're going to comply is another matter, but they usually do. So, and sometimes a company will go overboard. If they really want to blacklist you, they might not only say accidents or make that up. They might say you were a no good rotten SOB because you wouldn't drive with an audible air leak, or you wouldn't go on PC, or who knows what they're going to say. But that's the way at least you obtain some proof, or can obtain some proof, that you have been blacklisted. So check these out annually. Check your Driver IQ 10th Street and DAC report out annually. It's an important thing to know. And two, periodically apply for work with another carrier and then ask what background information they received. If they don't comply and don't give you the background information that you requested, and I usually say, send us not only what you were sent back, but any notes of any conversations that you had with my previous employers. That's what you send the carriers with whom you apply. And that at least you have some hope of obtaining some information about whether or not a carrier has blacklisted you illegally in violation of, say, a law, because you wouldn't drive illegally or call DOT on the company, or they have you can determine whether or not they have false accident or controlled substance and alcohol testing information that they're sending to prospective employers of you in order to retaliate. Thanks for watching.